Have you ever felt that the world in front of you is not the whole truth? As if something has been arranged, shaped, or limited long before you were born? Have you ever wondered why so many spiritual teachings seem incomplete, fragmented, or strangely controlled? What if the reason is not confusion, but design? What if something or someone has worked for centuries to keep you from seeing the world as it really is? Today, we enter one of the oldest and most feared ideas of ancient Gnostic thought, the Sethian Code, a mysterious key that the early seekers believed could shatter the illusion woven by the Demiurge. But before we reach the revelation itself, we need to follow the same path the ancient Sethians walked. We must question what we think we know, revisit the symbols that were edited or buried, and confront the uncomfortable possibility that the visible world may be only a faint reflection of a much deeper reality. And as we move through this investigation, ask yourself, why would certain truths be hidden unless they had the power to free you? If you're already feeling that something inside you is shifting, even slightly, then stay with me until the end of this journey. The revelation behind the Sethian Code is not something to hear casually. It was preserved in fragments, whispered in symbols, and guarded by those who believed humanity had forgotten its true origin. And today, we will try to follow their steps. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and join this community of seekers. Here, we explore the truths that were buried, the mysteries that were silenced, and the knowledge that was once forbidden. Your presence here means you're ready to see beyond the surface, so stay with me. To understand the Sethian Code, we must first face the central problem the ancient seekers identified. The world most people see is not the true world. According to the early Sethian Gnostics, humanity lives inside a constructed illusion, shaped by the Demiurge, a lesser creator who believes himself to be absolute. But this idea wasn't invented out of nowhere. It emerged from a pattern they observed across civilizations, knowledge disappearing, symbols rewritten, and spiritual teachings reduced to simple obedience instead of inner awakening. The Sethians believed this was not an accident, but part of a system designed to keep the human mind turned outward, never inward, never toward its own hidden spark. As strange as this sounds, the historical evidence is there. When the Nag Hammadi texts were discovered in 1945, scholars found writings that had vanished for over 1,500 years. Among them were Sethian scriptures describing a cosmic drama far older than any institution. These texts revealed a version of creation where the visible universe is not the final reality, but a compromised reflection. The Sethians claimed that our world was shaped by forces who either misunderstood the true divine source or intentionally distorted it. Some scholars believe these distortions were later reinforced by the growing power of religious authorities who preferred teachings that were easy to control rather than ones that encouraged spiritual independence. But the Sethians didn't rely only on mythic stories. They used symbols, the serpent, the hidden light, the triple-powered mind, to explain that the human soul carries a memory older than the world itself. This memory, they said, was what the Demiurge feared, and if that memory could be awakened, the illusion around us would begin to dissolve. Ask yourself, if you carried a spark of something truly divine, why would any force want you to forget it? This is where the first layer of the Sethian Code appears. It begins with recognizing that the spiritual map handed to you was incomplete, not wrong, just intentionally narrowed. And the moment you question that map, the illusion weakens. So tell me in the comments, have you ever felt that the world is hiding something deeper from you, even if you can't explain why? To uncover the Sethian Code, we must walk directly into the writings that tried to preserve it. When the Nag Hammadi library resurfaced, scholars found texts like the Apocryphon of John, the Three Steles of Seth, and the Gospel of the Egyptians. These manuscripts didn't simply offer alternative stories. They exposed an entirely different architecture of reality. In them, the universe begins with an unknowable source, a pure and infinite consciousness, far beyond anything the Demiurge could understand. The Sethians believed this source emanated layers of divine intelligence, and somewhere along this chain, something went wrong. A flawed being emerged, unaware of its own limitations, and this being shaped the material world. The Sethians named him the Demiurge. But here is the part many people never hear. The Sethian texts never describe the Demiurge as a monster. They describe him as blind, powerful, yes, but blind. Blind to the greater reality beyond himself. Blind to the infinite source. Blind to the spark hidden inside every human. And because he cannot see it, he builds systems, rules, and structures to maintain control over what he believes is his creation. Some scholars interpret this as a metaphor for institutional power that fears the awakening of individual consciousness. The Sethians themselves saw it as a spiritual truth. The world you perceive is shaped by a mind that cannot see what you truly are. As we look deeper into these texts, a pattern emerges. The Sethians constantly speak of remembrance, awakening, seeing through, and unveiling. They believe that the soul carries a memory from the higher realms, and this memory is the key the Demiurge cannot erase. This is why their writings feel like riddles. They were not trying to entertain. They were trying to hide profound truths in plain sight, protecting them from those who would distort them. And in every text, Seth, the ancient spiritual ancestor, appears, not as a historical figure, but as a symbol of the lineage that remembers its true origin. Now think about this. If memory is the enemy of illusion, then every moment of doubt, every moment you questioned what you were taught, every moment you felt that something about this world didn't add up, those moments were not mistakes. They were signals, traces of a knowledge you didn't know you carried. The Sethians would say that such moments are the first signs that the code is waking within you. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt a sudden intuition, a strange clarity, or a moment that made you feel as if you were remembering something you never learned? Many seekers report this sensation. And now, as we move forward, you'll see how these clues all connect. To understand how the Sethian code works, we must enter the symbolic world the ancient Sethians used to protect their knowledge. They didn't write philosophical manuals or rigid doctrines. Instead, they preserved their teachings inside images, metaphors, and sequences of symbols that someone unprepared would dismiss as mythology. But someone attentive, someone who feels something is off in this world, would understand that these symbols point toward a hidden architecture of reality. Among the most important was the Serpent of Insight, a figure many traditions interpreted negatively, but which, in the Sethian view, represented the moment the human mind first questioned the world offered to it. This serpent was not evil, but awakening, the gentle disruption inside the illusion. It symbolized the whisper that tells the seeker, "Look again. What you see is not all that exists." Another symbol central to the Sethian code is the triple-powered mind, described in texts like the three steles of Seth. This concept is often misunderstood, but the Sethians used it to explain that the human consciousness has three layers. The ordinary mind that interacts with the physical world, the deeper intuitive mind that senses truths hidden beneath appearances, and the highest luminous mind that remembers its origin beyond the Demiurge's creation. The Sethians believed the Demiurge could influence the first layer, confuse the second, but never touch the third, because that highest mind comes directly from the infinite source. When they described this triple structure, they weren't trying to create a complex theology. They were leaving a coded map, a reminder that no matter how thick the illusion becomes, there is a place within you that the illusion cannot reach. And perhaps the most mysterious symbol of all was Seth himself. To most people, Seth appears as a biblical character, the third son of Adam and Eve. But for the Sethians, he was not simply a person. He was a spiritual prototype, the symbol of a lineage of souls who remembered the higher realms. Seth represented the spark that refuses to forget, the inner clarity that survives even when the world around you insists on a single truth. Some scholars believe that the Sethian movement used this image to describe groups of initiates, who felt born into the wrong world. People who sensed since childhood that something about existence was strangely limited or incomplete. Whether this was historical, symbolic, or psychological, the message remains the same. Those who carry the Sethian spark often feel like observers inside their own lives, constantly questioning structures that others accept without hesitation. But why hide these symbols? Because the Sethians knew the illusion could only be broken from within. If they spoke too openly, their teachings could be erased again, distorted, or used by institutions that would turn them into rigid rules, the very opposite of gnosis. So they concealed their insights inside images that only awakened minds would understand. And this is where the Sethian code begins to appear. The symbols act as triggers. When a seeker contemplates them with an open mind, something inside begins to resonate, not because they are magical, but because they speak to the part of you that the Demiurge cannot silence. The Sethians believed that each symbol contains a fragment of the forgotten truth, and when these fragments come together, the illusion cracks. Now ask yourself, have you ever connected with a symbol, a serpent, a light, a name, a dream, and felt that it meant something you couldn't explain? Many seekers describe this as a strange familiarity, as if they were remembering rather than learning. This sensation, the Sethians would say, is the code responding, and once it responds, the next layer of revelation unfolds. When we ask who distorted the ancient truth, the answer is not as simple as blaming a single institution or historical group. The Sethians never spoke of a human conspiracy. Instead, they described a spiritual and psychological mechanism that influenced civilizations, religious systems, and even the way the human mind learns to perceive reality. In their view, the Demiurge, the architect of the material world, is not evil but profoundly mistaken. He believes he is the ultimate creator, unaware that a higher realm, the infinite source, exists beyond him. Because of this blindness, he shapes the world in his image, structured, limited, controlled, and centered around obedience. And as societies developed, human institutions unknowingly reinforced these patterns because they mirrored the same blind structure of the Demiurge's creation. But what does this mean in practical terms? According to the Sethian texts, the distortion begins with belief systems that tell you the divine is external, distant, and available only through intermediaries. Some scholars interpret this as a spiritual metaphor. The moment a person forgets that the divine spark lives within them, the illusion tightens. The Sethians believed the Demiurge encouraged this forgetfulness because it maintained his order. If humans remembered their true origin, they would no longer be bound by fear, guilt, or dependency, the very emotions that maintain the illusion. Over time, institutions of power adopted similar patterns, not because they were malicious, but because systems naturally tend toward control, hierarchy, and simplicity. Teaching the population to follow rules is easier than teaching them to awaken. Historical evidence supports this idea of layered forgetting. Ancient spiritual schools often taught inner knowledge, meditation, symbolic interpretation, direct connection to the divine. But as these teachings reached larger populations, they became simplified into commandments, rituals, and fixed dogmas. The Sethians saw this transformation and believed it was a sign of the Demiurge's influence permeating human systems. Even when a spiritual truth began pure, it eventually became rigid. This rigidity, they said, was the cage, not the religion itself, but the loss of inner knowledge behind it. For the Sethians, distortion wasn't an attack. It was a spiritual sleep that became normal. And yet, the question remains, why would the illusion be built in the first place? The Sethians taught that the material world is not a mistake. It is a realm where the soul can awaken itself. But awakening only has meaning when there is something to awaken from. The Demiurge's illusion acts like a veil, a filter that challenges the seeker to remember what cannot be taught directly. They believe the soul grows stronger by remembering its light inside a world that insists everything is darkness. Some scholars interpret this as a psychological insight. The illusion represents the ego, the part of us that clings to certainty and fears the unknown. The awakening, then, is the moment the deeper mind takes over and sees through conditioning. This is why the Sethian code is not a set of instructions, but a shift in perception. The moment you begin to question what you think is absolute, the wiring of the illusion weakens. And once you understand who or what distorted the truth, not a villain, but a blind creator and the systems built in his image, you stop fighting the world and begin seeing through it. The illusion does not break with force. It dissolves with awareness. So I ask you, have you ever felt that the beliefs you were given growing up did not fully explain the mysteries you sensed inside yourself? If so, the Sethians would say this is not doubt, it is awakening. And the next step is to discover the turning point they guarded for centuries. The Sethian code reaches its peak in a single powerful revelation, one that was never meant to be shouted publicly, but whispered to those who are ready to confront the nature of their own consciousness. The ancient Sethians believed that the Demiurge's illusion persists only because humans look outward for truth. The moment you turn inward, the illusion begins to collapse. This might sound poetic, but in the Sethian texts it is very literal. They taught that the visible world is not the final authority, because a higher light already exists inside you, untouched and unreachable by the Demiurge. And the hidden revelation is this: the spark within you is not part of the material world at all. It is older. It is from the source beyond creation. It remembers what the world has forgotten. This is where the illusion begins to fracture. The Sethians believed that the Demiurge could shape environments, systems, and even beliefs, but he could not shape the core of your consciousness. That core, often called the divine spark, is the only part of you that does not belong to this constructed reality. And here is the turning point. Once you recognize that your consciousness originates beyond the illusion loses its authority over you. It becomes a stage, not a prison. A temporary experience, not an absolute truth. The Sethians claimed that this realization was so powerful that even fragments of it could alter the seeker's inner world, creating a sensation of clarity, presence, and detachment from fear. It is not an escape, it is awakening. But how did the Sethians describe this awakening? They used a simple but profound metaphor: the eye that sees the eye. In ordinary life, we look at the world through a single lens, the physical senses influenced by the Demiurge's boundaries. But the inner spark sees differently. It perceives patterns, meanings, synchronicities, intuitions, and insights that do not come from the material world. The Sethians believed this inner perception is the true identity of the human soul. When you shift from the outer eye to the inner eye, the world does not change, but the meaning behind it becomes visible. Some scholars compare this to a psychological awakening, where a person suddenly recognizes their own conditioning and sees life with renewed clarity. The Sethians saw it as a spiritual event, the moment the spark remembers itself. Here is the forgotten revelation in its simplest form. The illusion is strongest when you believe the world defines you, but it breaks the moment you understand that you define how you see the world. And that inner perspective, the one that senses light even in confusion, is the part untouched by the Demiurge. The ancient seekers insisted that this is not imagination. It is recognition. They claimed that when a person connects to this deeper awareness, the grip of fear loosens. Guilt dissolves. Authority becomes relative, not absolute. The world becomes a temporary classroom rather than a cosmic hierarchy. This shift terrified those who misunderstood it, because it meant spiritual power did not come from outside, from temples, rules, or intermediaries, but from the internal connection to the source. Now let me ask you directly, have you ever experienced a sudden moment of clarity, a feeling that your mind opened or expanded beyond what you were taught, even for a second? Many seekers say these moments feel like a memory resurfacing, something familiar, yet never fully understood. The Sethians believe these flashes are the spark attempting to speak through the noise of the material world. And they insisted that if you follow these moments, instead of ignoring them, the illusion begins to unravel piece by piece. This is the heart of the Sethian code, the realization that your awareness is not a product of this universe, but a visitor inside it. And once you know that, everything you perceive starts to shift. If everything we have uncovered so far is true, if the Sethian code is not mythology, but a map, then the next question becomes unavoidable. What does this revelation mean for your daily life? The Sethians believed that the moment a person recognizes the illusion, something subtle but irreversible begins inside them. They start noticing patterns in their emotions, routines, and relationships that once felt normal, but now seem strangely artificial. This isn't paranoia. It is clarity. The Sethians said the Demiurge's illusion works by convincing humans that the surface of reality is all there is. But once you awaken to the existence of the inner spark, you start living from a new center, one the illusion cannot penetrate. You begin making choices not based on fear or expectations, but on something much older: intuition, inner knowing, and a sense of alignment that has no external explanation. This shift changes how you interpret challenges. Before, problems felt like punishments or failures. But through the Sethian lens, they become signals, opportunities to deepen awareness. The Sethians taught that the illusion strengthens itself through emotional turbulence, repetitive guilt, and the constant search for external validation. When a person stops feeding these patterns, the illusion loses its grip. You may notice that certain fears that once controlled you now feel lighter, as if they belong to a different version of you. This is not magic. It is a natural reaction to reconnecting with the part of yourself that existed before the world taught you who to be. Many seekers describe this stage as both liberating and unsettling. Liberating because they finally feel awake, and unsettling because the familiar structures of life no longer define them. But this awakening also comes with responsibility. The Sethians warned that once you begin seeing the illusion, you must choose how to respond. Do you fall back into old patterns because they feel safe? Or do you continue questioning, observing, and expanding? They believe the spark grows stronger each time you choose awareness over autopilot. And even though ancient texts use symbolic language, some scholars believe this aligns with modern understandings of consciousness. The more you practice self-awareness, the more your brain rewires patterns of perception. The Sethians simply described this long before neuroscience existed. They insisted that the spark within you is not passive. It seeks expression. It urges you to live with clarity, to listen to your intuitions, to recognize when something feels off, and to trust that sentiment even when the world tells you otherwise. This inner shift also affects your understanding of spirituality. In the illusion, spirituality is often presented as a set of rules or beliefs to follow. But through the Sethian code, spirituality becomes recognition. The recognition that the divine is not distant, but woven into your consciousness itself. The Sethians insisted that no ritual, temple, or authority can give you what you already carry. This idea was dangerous in ancient times because it removed the need for intermediaries. It empowered the individual. But today, it becomes a quiet form of spiritual freedom. You stop searching outside and begin listening inside. That listening, the Sethians taught, is what breaks the Demiurge's influence. Not rebellion, not denial, simply awareness. So let me ask you, has there ever been a moment when your intuition contradicted what everyone else believed, and yet you felt it was the real truth? These moments matter. They are flashes of the spark pushing through the illusion, reminding you that your consciousness did not originate here. The more you honor these moments, the more the illusion weakens. And when enough of them come together, something extraordinary happens. The world remains the same, but your relationship to it transforms completely. You stop living inside the illusion and start navigating through it. This is the stepping stone to the final revelation, the point where the Sethian code becomes not just an idea, but a lived reality. Now that we've walked through the layers of the Sethian code, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The illusion of the Demiurge is not a cage made of walls, but a cage made of beliefs. It exists only as long as you accept the world exactly as it is presented to you. The ancient Sethians understood this deeply. They taught that awakening does not require escaping the world, defeating cosmic forces, or learning secret rituals. It requires remembering who you are beneath the surface, remembering the spark that predates this reality. And in this remembrance lies the final revelation. The Demiurge's illusion collapses the moment you recognize that you were never trapped inside it. You are only trained to believe you were. The Sethians insisted that the spark within you is not a visitor here by accident. It came to experience, to awaken, and to see through what others cannot. This understanding changes everything. When you realize the illusion is sustained by your perception, you begin to reclaim your inner authority. The Sethians believed that this is the moment when the seeker becomes fully conscious, when they no longer react to life as a victim, but respond as someone who sees the deeper pattern behind events. They claimed that the source, the infinite realm beyond the Demiurge, is always communicating with you through intuition, synchronicity, inner clarity, and sudden insight. But the illusion teaches you to ignore these signals. Once you start noticing them, the illusion weakens. You may find that your fears lose intensity, your thoughts become clearer, and your sense of connection grows stronger. This is not imagination. It is the spark reclaiming itself. What comes next is entirely personal. The Sethians never created a strict path or manual, because awakening unfolds differently for each seeker. But they left a clear principle. The more you honor your inner truth, the harder it becomes for the illusion to control you. This is why the Sethian code is not a secret technique. It is a shift in identity. You stop seeing yourself as a product of the material world and begin seeing the material world as an experience your consciousness is navigating. From this perspective, life becomes a journey of awareness rather than a sequence of obligations. You start noticing the subtle intelligence behind coincidences. You feel drawn to situations that expand your mind. You sense when something resonates and when something restricts you. The Sethians believe these sensations are the spark guiding you through the illusion, showing you which paths align with the source. But this journey is not meant to be walked alone. The ancient seekers knew that awakening is stronger when shared, when spoken, when remembered among others who feel the same inner pull. That is why communities of seekers existed in every era, small groups preserving truths that could not survive in the public sphere. Today, the world is different, yet the need for connection remains the same. If this video helped you break even one layer of the illusion, then you are already part of a lineage far older than this channel, this era, or this world, and your voice matters here. So before you go, I ask you to take one action. Leave a comment sharing the moment in this video that resonated most with you. Not just to support this channel, although that helps us keep bringing these revelations forward, but to strengthen the memory of the hidden truths we are rediscovering together. Like this video if the Sethian code awakens something in you, and subscribe if you want to continue this journey with a community of seekers who are ready to see beyond the surface. Every comment, every like, every subscription becomes part of a living archive of awareness, a way of keeping this ancient lineage alive in the modern world. And now I leave you with one final question, the same question the Sethians asked their initiates. If the illusion can be broken by awareness, what else might you be able to see if you keep awakening? Let the search continue.